quickly. But you're going to need to do that with a very strong vocabulary. Okay, you're going to need to do that with a very good understanding of the language, obviously. Okay, and they're going to do that through reading comprehension, sentence correction, and critical reasoning on the verbal side, that part that forms your 800 score. Okay, so yes, about me, I am Sue McLagan. I've focused, my specialization is in language teaching, but also in critical thinking skills, in neuropsychology, in psychology and education. I have been teaching GMAT for over 10 years. I said my journey started 15 years ago. I've been teaching GMAT for over 10 years, and I keep trying to improve my skills. We are constantly on a journey to get better and better at what we do. We can build on what we know and learn, and I try to impart those skills in the classes that I give to my students. So to demonstrate the way I would do a class, I'm going to use sentence correction as an example today. And I'm going to go into a presentation, share my screen with you. So just need to go in and share my screen. Oh, Andrew, if you could just make me able to share my screen, then I can just share the screen and go into my presentation. So I'm going to, as I said to you, I'm going to choose sentence correction. I'm then going to take it from an easy to a harder and then a hard question to just show the difference between the three. You will then get an idea of my teaching style and how I go about it. Okay. I'll just give it a few more seconds just to make sure that I can share my screen. I'm just going to try again. Anju, are you there? Ah, great.
See you. Now you will be able
to
share your screen.
Yeah. Yes, I can now. Thank you so much. Perfect. Yes. Okay, everyone. So here we are. Okay. You are welcome to type up questions in the chat. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see them because I'm presenting, but I will address them afterwards. Okay. So here we go. Okay, welcome to a mini sentence correction lesson. Okay. When I do classes, I do give background I like going into the concepts, love working with the questions. I recommend highly using the official guide. So I use the official guide. All my questions will come from the official guide, okay? But then there will be extra exercises in terms of honing the skills, the problem-solving skills, the critical reasoning skills, the underlying skills required to get good at the questions, okay? So here we go. Plants are more efficient at acquiring carbon than are fungi. So we're starting with A. Obviously, A is always the underlined bit, and we're always going to read for error. If I don't see an error, I can park it. It could be the correct answer. The tip here is that many students immediately discount A. It's just psychological. They believe that you have to correct, but around 20% of the correct answers are A. Okay, so I'm going to read for error here. Plants are more efficient at acquiring carbon than are fungi in the form of carbon dioxide and converting it into energy-rich sugars. I see an error because I see fungi in front here. What's modifying fungi, okay, is saying in the form of carbon. Okay, so plants are more efficient at acquiring carbon than are fungi in the form of carbon. Doesn't make sense. Okay, it would be carbon in the form of carbon dioxide. Okay, I would be looking for carbon in the form of carbon dioxide. Now, when I'm well practiced and I'm well skilled, I'd be able to scan down and see that the possible answers here would be C and D. In a lesson, I need to ascertain who my audience is, what the level of skill in my audience is. Once I've ascertained that, and obviously I do that in consultation with students that would attend the class, then I determine how I'm going to approach the class, because not one size fits all. Sometimes it does, other times not. Okay, so here I'm going to explain that fungi wouldn't fit because fungi can't be in the form of carbon dioxide. So I go to B because it's got the same thing, and E. Now I want to see if I can eliminate. You eliminate in sets. Okay, let's see how they've structured B. Plants are more efficient at acquiring carbon than fungi in the form I have the same issue. Then plants acquire carbon more efficiently than fungi in the form of carbon dioxide, the same issue. There's also, though, a parallel structure issue. More often than not, when you have a modifier error, okay, there's also parallelism and modification can go together. Not always, but in many instances, particularly in easier questions. So they go quicker. Now, I have half an hour. I'm just demonstrating. I'm not doing a full class with you here. Okay, so I'm moving faster. So what I've done is I've eliminated A, B, and E. Always go by process of elimination. Okay, very important to read everything on the page unless you're running out of time. Okay, only when you're running out of time and you know you need to make up time, you employ strategies where you do it as quickly as I have now and eliminate it, unless you're supremely confident, incredibly well prepared, and read very fast. Okay, so I go to C, I go to D. Plants are more efficient than fungi at acquiring carbon in the form of carbon dioxide and converting it into energy-rich sugars. Now, there's no problem with that at all. That, to me, looks excellent. Everything fits, okay? Plants are, we got the verb are, more efficient than fungi, the correct version of doing that comparison. They are more efficient than fungi at the correct preposition, acquiring carbon in the form of carbon dioxide and converting it to energy-rich sugars, the it referring back to the carbon. Okay, so I go to B. Now I've got this comma here. It said plants more efficient than fungi at acquiring carbon. Now, because of that comma and the structure of this sentence, it's plants in the form of carbon dioxide, because this would be modifying plants in between the two. And the plants is what in the form of carbon dioxide would be referring to. So I can eliminate D and I'm left with C. That is my answer. Okay. So once again, like I said, I'm doing this fast. I'm kind of going on the fast button for you. Okay. In a class, I would go a lot slower and I would go through questions. But it's quite straightforward in an easier question. Nothing in GMAT is easy, but this is your easier sentence correction at about a 500 score level, okay? Because I'm gathering, I'm not going to go, I'm heading for that 500, 600 and up. Okay, so let's go to the next one, a harder sentence completion. We're going into a harder level. Over the next few years, increasing demands on the Chattahoochee River, which flows into the Apalachicola River, could alter the saline content of Apalachicola Bay, which would rob the oysters there of their flavor and to make them decrease in size. Less distinctive and less in demand. Really awkward. But what I've noticed, because I look for error, when you're well prepared and in class, we go through things like this: to make, okay? we would need something parallel with another to make. We've got an infinite, like in terms of the verb form here, it doesn't fit. Okay, so that to make makes everything, throws everything out. I'm not going to overthink it. I eliminate it. A cannot be the right answer. Okay, so I go to B. Over the next few years, I'm plugging everything into the entire sentence. Okay, increasing demands on the Chattahoochee River. And remember, don't worry about things like this very long name of a river. Don't get stuck on those things. It could be River X as far as you're concerned, which flow into a river. Okay, River A could alter the saline content of Apalachicola Bay. And now we've got an and, okay, it would rob the oysters there of their flavor. Now, what does the it refer to? Okay, so I've actually got the little piece here just to show you the error. Okay, to show you the error over here, it is wrong, the singular referent. Okay, we can't put an it in here, so I eliminate it immediately. Okay, oops. C, and rob the oysters there of their flavor, making them decrease in size. Okay, we don't have parallel structure. Okay, when you've got the making, you would have robbing the oysters of their flavor, making them. Okay, we don't have parallel structure, so I could immediately, because GMAT requires parallel structure, and again in lessons we would cover the concept of parallel structure. So I eliminate C. Okay. D. Over the last few years, increasing demands on the Chattahoochee River, which flows into the Apalachicola River, could alter the saline content of Apalachicola Bay and rob the oysters there of their flavor, making them decrease in size, less distinctive and less in demand. Now we've got the robbing, okay? Robbing the oysters there of their flavor and making, robbing the oysters there of their flavor and making them smaller. The and linking the making and the robbing. Now, this is why this question is also harder, okay? There's quite a few things here you have to spot, but also spotting which ones need to be parallel to one another. Robbing the oysters. Also, this is very long-winded, but it fits perfectly. It's a longer sentence, a longer, more long-winded sentence with words that are also complicated to pronounce. But when you know that you don't need to be pronouncing them and you can glance over them like the Chattahoochee River, for example, you know that those are what we call fluff. They're not necessary to the broad understanding of the sentence and the grammar rules that are required. So even though this is a long sentence, indeed, D fixes everything perfectly, making everything parallel and robbing the oysters there, okay, in that area of their flavor, the flavor that belongs to them, and making them smaller. Now we got parallel together, making them smaller, less distinctive and less in demand. Those three things are the list linked to making. Robbing is robbing the oysters there of their flavor. The making and the robbing needed to be parallel. I'm very happy with D. I believe that's my answer. So I need to eliminate E. So I plug everything in again, but in the interests of time, okay, and you getting an idea of the style, I see they're robbing the oysters there of their flavor. Then I've got the and after a comma and making them decrease in size, okay? Unnecessarily wordy. Also, the parallelism doesn't fit, okay? Because we got making them, robbing the oysters, and then, so robbing the oysters there of their flavor and making them smaller fits better than putting a comma and making them decrease in size. We've thrown the parallelism out. We've changed the structure. We're not mirror. There is no mirror there between them. Okay, like robbing the oysters there of their flavor and making them smaller, less distinctive, and less in demand. Okay, so maybe you've gathered by looking at the difference between the two, it was easier to solve the first one than it was the next one. More complicated, takes a little longer. Okay, now we've got a shorter one. It's not as long, okay, but this one is considered hard. So the clue here, okay, well, the tip here is that not everything that's long is hard, okay, and not everything that's short is easy. All right, here in this particular one, it relates to meaning. Everything in GMAT 2 is about meaning. You want to convey a meaning. You want to see things in the correct context. They need to be grammatically correct, okay, in sentence correction, but you want to get the correct meaning across to your audience. So here we have teratomas are unusual forms of cancer because they are composed of tissues such as tooth and bone, not normally found in the organ in which the tumor appears. Okay. Now, let's have a look at what is happening here. Teratomas are unusual forms of cancer because they, okay, referring back to the teratomas, are composed of tissues such as tooth and bone, not normally found in the organ in which the tumor appears. Now, there's a meaning issue here, okay? This one is telling us that the tooth and bone is found in the organ in which the tumor appears. That doesn't make sense, okay? So I'm going to leave A and go, hold on. I want the issue to tie in with what a tissue such as tooth and bone actually are, okay? So let's go to B. Teratomas are unusual forms of cancer because they are composed of tissues like tooth and bone that are not normally found in the organ in which the tumor appears. Again, the emphasis is on tooth and bone and not on the tissues. It doesn't make sense. C. Teratomas are unusual forms of cancer because they are composed of tissues like tooth and bone, tissues not normally found in the organ in which the tumor appears. Now we've got that like as well. So what we've got here is that tissues are like tooth and bone, okay? And that wouldn't make sense either because it's not tissues like, it's tissues are. You've got tooth and bone that are tissues, okay? Composed of tissues, not like something, but are something. There's a difference. Okay, so I don't like those. I eliminate them. I'm going very quickly, I know. In a class, I would slow down and then explain the like. I would also explain the such as and the like constructions and how GMAT likes or doesn't like them. Okay, for example, using that word like, if you excuse the pun, but here the like means they're similar, okay, but not are them. Okay, so indeed, I've got teratomas are unusual forms of cancer in that their composition, tissues such as tooth and bone, is. Okay, now the is not right. Plus, it's an awkward sentence. I'm not seeing anything that I feel fits here. It's terribly awkward. Okay, in that their composition, tissues such as tooth and bone, we actually need what we call an A positive, okay? And then I would explain what an A positive is in class as well for those that wouldn't know what it is. So I'm going to go to E, the correct answer, okay? And rather explain why the answer is correct. Teratomas are unusual forms of cancer in that they are composed of tissues such as tooth and bone, tissues not normally found in the organ in which the tumor appears. Okay, so what we have here is the A positive, composed of tissues such as tooth and bone, a noun phrase, followed by a noun phrase, because we need that to give context. Okay, we've got the in that they are, we've got that all-important are, and what they're composed of. They're composed of tissues, and that tooth and bones are kinds of tissues. So we've got the right preposition, okay? Then we've got the appositive, such as tooth and bone, and then the description, tissues, not with that repetition of tissues. Okay. Tissues not normally found in the organ in which the tumor appears. Now, this is a shorter sentence, but this requires much more sophisticated knowledge of the language. Okay. Things like appositives and why we need them. Okay. Remember, you don't need to understand the word apositive as such. Your logic needs to tell you that you need a noun phrase describing another noun phrase to actually give you context, to add meaning and make the meaning clear in your sentence. So as much as this one is shorter, it takes a lot more insight to understand it. And I would need a lot more time to explain it. Okay. Now, what GMAT will do to you is in that, a lot of people feel, why do we say in that they, for example, instead of just because or whatever it is, okay? Every now and then, and remember you get 13 sentence correction questions, 12, 13 sentence correction questions, you could get something that is perfectly constructed. The meaning is clear, it's well done grammatically, but it is longer than it needs to be, okay? They want to see that you're a problem solver, you understand the rules, and that you understand where even though it has been made more complex, it's grammatically correct, the meaning is clear, and it's the only one there that has both of these happening for it, even if it is a longer sentence. Okay, so it's perfectly fine to say in that. Okay, I know that was quick. I know I was giving you a mini lesson, but I did it in fast forward. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, and I'm going to stop sharing. There aren't any questions, so Anju, I think I've taken quite a bit of time there. I think I'm ready to hand over to Shimon if there aren't any questions.
Yeah, sure.
Super, great.
Shimon?
Hi. Welcome, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Again, good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Shimon Goldschmidt. I work together with Sue McLagan. We run GMAT, GRE, SAT, math, quantitative and verbal tuition. Today we're going to be talking about briefly touching on preparing for the GMAT and particularly GMAT quantitative. So just before we start, a brief introduction. I am originally from South America, from São Paulo, Brazil. And however, for a number of years, I live, as I'm reporting now, from Johannesburg, South Africa. I have my background is in engineering. I'm a chemical engineer by the University of São Paulo, and but I have become with the years a specialist on preparing, helping, assisting people on the to optimize, boost their skills in order to get great scores in the GMAT, GRE, and SAT, and other exams as well. It's been more than 15, almost 20 years now doing that, first in Brazil, in South Africa, and online also with people from India. Basically, the idea when we are assisting people to in the journey, right, to prepare, to get the score that they need, you know, to optimize their preparation and maybe make it reflect on the score on the date of exam. I have, as particularly on the quantitative side, as a mission, first of all, make sure that all questions, all concepts that are dealt with, all parts of the program are very well understood by the student to the extent that GMAT requires. students should be 100% fluent, in a sense, with the way the GMAT asks questions. And finally, the idea is also to always provide pathways, methods to solve the different GMAT questions. Okay, that being said, we're going to show now one example, two examples of questions. The idea is to show not just the math behind it, but the GMAT philosophy behind it. It's not the same thing. And I hope you enjoy what we're going to see next. Look at this question here. It's a regular question. If 1 over x minus 1 over x plus 1 equals to 1 over x plus 4, then x could be 0 minus 1 minus 2 minus 3 minus 4. You know, I think it's not a difficult question, except that perhaps one could be a little bit worried. Why does it say could be? But what we're going to do first is let's, oh, sorry, a mistake. Let's start with what I call a school approach, high school approach. So a person looks at this question and says, I know how to do it. It's an algebraic expression. I have to remember, I take the LCM, even though, I have denominators that are variables. But what is I'm going to take the LCM only on the left side, LCM between x and x plus 1. So it's going to be x times x plus 1. Am I right? Both on the left and on the right. I went because we don't have that much time. I have already went a step ahead, and I multiplied top and bottom by x plus 1. Right, that would be the new denominator. The top here is 1. Then I multiplied the second fraction by x, because the whole denominator is x times x plus 1. There's nothing common between them, and therefore multiply the top also by x, and the right hand side I left it untouched. If you do the math, x plus 1 minus x, you can subtract now because you have common denominator. I'm doing a little bit quick, but if you want to copy and check by yourselves. And what you end up with is that these x's get canceled, right? This x gets canceled with that x, and therefore we have 1 over x times x plus 1 equals to 1 over x plus 4. And I think it's quite obvious that in such case, this part here equals to this part over here. And so x times x plus 1 equals to x plus 4. I'm going to open up. Oh, I did already. I open up. I multiply x by x plus 1. So I got x squared plus x equals to x plus 4. Now, again, interesting enough, x and x cancels out, and x squared equals to 4. So what number squared equals to 4? Either 2 or minus 2. Those are the possible answers. Now you said, but there's 2 answers. Yeah, but the GMAT asks could be. So it could be, if you can see my screen at the bottom, x could be 2, and x could be minus 2. Now, 2 is not part of the answers. The only answer here possible is minus 2, and alternative C is the correct one. Now, I call it this the school approach. The question came in, we didn't care there were alternatives, we solved it, right? And we got an answer. I would say that most people can get this right. The problem here with this approach, and there is a problem. You can say, what problem? I got it right. Problem with time. You can get it right, but if it takes you long, There are other questions that demand more time. Some questions can be done quicker. So before we move, I want to challenge us to find a quicker way to do it. And this is something that we see a lot in the course. There is a method, a very famous method that is popular, known as back solving. In other words, your working outs are not regarded. So all this algebra can be very nice, beautiful, but no one cares. The question maker wants to know whether you're going to put C. So, and this question is a question that has a very strong component on that. In this case, back solving would also mean, and particularly in this case, would also mean elimination. Elimination. Well, what am I talking about? Well, we have, I'm going to copy one more time, 1 over x minus 1 over x plus 1 equals to 1 over x plus 4. Now, we all know from school that you cannot divide by 0. Because of that, you know, look at here, this x cannot be 0. And likewise for the other two expressions, without doing any calculation. X plus 1 cannot be 0, which means that x cannot be minus 1. And finally, we have x plus 4, which it also cannot be 0. Why? Because I cannot divide by 0. And therefore, x cannot be minus 4. Do you see what's happening? I haven't even calculated anything. And I can immediately cancel alternatives A, B, and E. I'm going to take out C. We know that C is the correct one, but in this second way, you haven't even started, and you're already between alternatives C and D. And there's no need to do the algebra. Even now, there is no need. What do you do next? Is either C or D. So what do you do next? You simply test one of them. You just test one of them. And you're going to be happy no matter what. If you get right, it's right. And finish. And if you get wrong, the other one is right. What do I mean by test? You replace. X could be minus 2 or minus 3. Is there any chance it could be both? No, it can't. Because GMAT has only one correct question, or correct answer. Every question is only correct answer. So you test one of them. Understand? Here, for example, if you test, we know already because we have the answer on the left-hand side, right? But we know that x equals, if a person, imagine for a moment that you detach yourself from this question and you're watching someone else doing this, starting from the quicker way without knowing the algebra before. So you know, imagine if someone is going to test, is going to try x equals to minus 2. He will get right. We know that, but the person starting first wouldn't get. But it doesn't matter. What I want to tell you is that even if you get wrong, you know that then the other one is correct. What do I mean by get right? If you replace x with minus 2, you get a statement of truth. The left side equals to the right side. So I'm just going to plug in here, minus 2, minus 2, and minus 2. And this will, I don't have too much more space, so I'm going to just tell you, you can carry on from here. You're going to see that that works out. Even if it didn't work out, then you know that it's not. Again, if you start with D and you put x equals to minus 3, It's not more work because you eliminate D and C is the only one left. Okay, this question, in my opinion, embodies a lot what GMAT is all about. It's a double mission. Get the question right in the least amount of time. And eventually, I dare to say that if you get right, but you take long, it's not 100% right. Oh, but I got it right. It's going to count. Yes, but you're sacrificing time. And some questions do require more time. Okay. Again, if there's any questions, any comments, feel free to put on the Q&As. Otherwise, in the chat, I will take them. Okay, so that's one question. Another question I want to show you is there is a certain type of question in GMAT called data sufficiency. Imagine that there might be people here who are not acquainted with GMAT, and it's called data sufficiency. Data sufficiency, it's a little bit of a different story. Is that instead of you trying to get the answer, you actually try to determine and to ascertain whether you have enough information to answer the question without having to answer the question itself. Let me give you an example. Look at this question here. On the number line, point R has coordinate R, and point T has coordinate T. Okay, so we have 2 points and they have certain coordinate number line. They have value basically. Is T less than 0? Is T negative? You know, again, the problem is it's not is it yes or no? Am I able to answer that? Number one, so then the data sufficiency questions work on the following way. There are 2 statements, and you need to see first separate and then together if they are sufficient. And you're going to answer according to these alternatives. You're going to answer A, if statement 1 alone is sufficient, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question asked. Or you're going to answer B, exactly the opposite. If statement 2 alone is sufficient, but statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question asked. So if one of them is, the other one is not, it's A or B. What about if both are? There is a chance that can happen. We'll get in a moment. You're going to answer C if both statements 1 and 2 together are sufficient to answer the question asked, but neither statement alone is sufficient. You need both, and trying them separately doesn't work. D, exactly the opposite, is each statement alone is sufficient to answer the question asked. Could be that 1 alone and 2 alone are sufficient. And finally, even together, they're not sufficient. So you have 5 different scenarios. You're gonna have to look at this statement separately first. You know, and the rules of the game, this is a GMAT question, the rules of and the GMAT rule, that it could be that one statement is alone sufficient to answer the question, or the other statement alone, or each one separate. And then you have another scenario when nothing of this is happening and you need to bring them together, and then they will be sufficient. And there's a 5th scenario, then you try either way and nothing works, and you're still right. You have enough, you have not enough information to answer the question. That's alternative E. Okay, so that is the idea. Some statements you need to work on more. Some statements, again, because time is of essence, we should be able to do quicker. You know, you look at statement number 1 and it says -1 less. So again, let's do them separately. Let's just look at number 1. -1 less than R less than 0. You say, thank you very much, but thank you so much for informing me about R. But the question asked about T. Or maybe there's another piece of information on the question. There isn't. In this case, there isn't. There was R and there is T, they're separate. And therefore, there is no information on T. Don't waste too much time. You know, this is an example of a case of a statement that it's not working. There's no way, it's not going to lead me to get the answer of what T is. And it's finished. So I tried number 1, sometimes it can be not sufficient. Sorry, I put an S there. Is usually my abbreviation for not sufficient. It's not sufficient. There's nothing wrong with it, but I can't answer the question, right? And that's it. Now, but regardless of that, we need to see number 2 alone. Now, careful. We need to obliterate. We need to forget number. Why? Because the answer could be B. B as in ball. It could be that number 2 is sufficient. So you need to look at B alone. Says number 2. The distance between R and T is equal to R squared. All right. Now, it's another case that, you know, that there's not too much happening. I drew a line here on the side. So if you can look at me here on the look at the top, what we're saying is like this. We have we don't know which one is bigger, right? And we have, I'm looking at number 2 alone, hey? Number 2 alone is saying, if you can look at me here at the top right corner, we have R with coordinate R, we have T with coordinate T, and what it's telling us now is that the distance between them is R squared. Not only that, you can ask me, but who told you that T is ahead of R? I don't know, maybe. But can you see that, you know, is T negative, positive? I don't even know where they are. So even worse, I don't even know where 0 is. Understand? Is 0 over here or over here? I got no idea. And therefore, number 2 is not sufficient. Okay, I'm going to erase my drawings on the right-hand side here. But where are we now? Where are we now in terms of sufficiency, in terms of the alternatives? I can tell you, it's not alternative A, because 1 is not sufficient. It's not alternative B, because 2 is not sufficient. And together with that is not alternative D. Even worse, it's exactly the opposite. Nothing is sufficient. Up so far, I look at 1, I look at 2 separately, and nothing could tell me whether T is negative or not. Now, let's go together. Let's do 1 and 2 in one go. I'm going to use the same line. Now, here becomes more interesting. And you can also pick up, it happens many times, that now statement 1 seems to be so far off. I mean, you tell me a range of values for R, and there's nothing connected. Might be that now I need. Now I need. So let's have a look. This is 0. I'm going to put on the right-hand side. This is -1. This is pretty much what number 1 is telling me. And this is R, somewhere over here. This is point R. Number 1 is telling me that R is between -1 and 0. Where the question goes on T, I know that T is R square, away from R. So where is T? Well, first of all, either I'm going to go R squared this way or this way. I don't know. I don't know if T is bigger or smaller than R. So I have to contemplate both scenarios, because if I keep the question, if I end up with a question, then I can. There's no way I can tell the test maker. I cannot ascertain to you. I cannot make sure that T is negative. Obviously, that if T is gonna be less than I'm gonna put in lilac. If T is less than R, then now for sure t is negative, because r is already negative and t is less. But what if t is more? Oh, I don't know where it is. No, you do. You do. Because r, since the absolute value of r is less than 1, I'm writing on, let me write on the top here. The absolute value of r is less than 1. What happens when I have a number between 0 and 1 and I square it? It becomes even smaller. 0.5 squared is 0.25. So what is going to happen is I can make sure that r squared is also going to be less than 1. So what is the story, right? I know that t is r squared away from. So even if I go to the right, even if I'm gonna add r squared, but it's less than r to go back to 0. So there is no way out. It must be that your t has to be somewhere here. And that will be the place. Why? Because r squared is less than r. So no matter how far behind, okay, between 0 and -1, but if you're telling me that t could be r squared units ahead of r, that distance is less than r. Sorry, what I want to say here is I made a mistake. I wanted to say in showing r squared is less than r. That's what I meant. So not less than 1 is correct, but it's less than r. So even if I go forward, I don't go forward as much. I'll give an example. If let's see one example here at the bottom, just to make sure that it's clear. Let's say, for example, that that your r is -0.6. It's a good value. And now, where would be t if you go forward? Because that's my concern. If it's less than if t is less than r, there's no problem. But if I go forward, what am I going to? I'm going to add -0.6 squared, which is the same as adding 0.36. When I add 0.36, you know, t would still be negative. It would still be less. It will be what? -6 plus 0.36. You're going to get -0.24. Okay, it's basically sitting on the property that a number between 0 and 1, or the absolute value of a number between 0 and 1 or 0 minus 1, when you square it, you go below itself, or below its absolute value. So that is the idea. Okay, and therefore I don't know if t is bigger or smaller than r, but I can guarantee that t is negative. So I don't know if I don't know the value, and I don't know if it's less or more than r. But they didn't ask any of that. They asked whether t is negative. That much I can say, yes, it is. I can guarantee to you that it is. So together, look at me on the very left side, top left side, together they are sufficient. And this is exactly the contents of alternative C. See with me there if alternative C doesn't spell out what happened to us. Both statements 1 and 2 together sufficient to answer the question. Asked. Careful. The question asked. The question was, is t less than 0? Yes, it is. More than r or less than r, but it's less than 0. But not only that, neither statement alone is sufficient. Okay, try 1 alone, didn't work out, is unrelated, r between 0 and -1 doesn't say anything about t. And the second one, just give me the distance between r and t, but nothing about negative and positive, but together I can get there. Any questions? Feel free to take note. With that, I conclude. I just wanted to give some a little bit of advice regarding GMAT quantitative. First and foremost, mental maths. I don't know if everybody's acquainted. You are not allowed a calculator. So instead, you need to know your your decimals, fractions, powers, and not all of them, but the basic ones, the small numbers ones. Also because it's a two-way road, right? You're not allowed a calculator, but they know that, and they don't want you to become a walking calculator. The idea is that they use it back again and again. They use small numbers. So if you remember those, it's very good. Very important. GMAT does not focus on working out, doesn't consider working out. And again, you saw in the first question, you could have done the whole algebra for 1 over x and so on, or not. The correct alternative was C. Regardless, the test make one, so are you going to put C or not? Understand? You can do the whole algebra or you can do back solving. So the focus is on getting the answer. Careful. Some GMAT quantitative questions will require more than average 2 minutes per question. But you can say, how can I complete the test then? No, some others, again, you have a good example today, can be done quicker, and then you borrow time from one question to another. And that's the whole story, the whole balance between accuracy and pacing. Now, you have a difficulty on GMAT. You're not allowed to skip questions. So you need to deal with the question in front of you. But the dilemma is, can I do it? And can I do it quicker? Because otherwise, either if you have time to spare, so you can do it. Otherwise, sometimes we need to learn to guess to make sure that we get to the end of the test on time. Okay. Finally, it's not just about quantitative. The GMAT allows you to choose which order you're going to answer your test. Are you going to start with verbal and then quantitative, or quantitative and verbal? There's an idea that usually you should start with your strong point first, but you need to balance against being tired on the second one. So, for example, people that are strong on the math have to choose. Are you going to start with your strong point, but can you afford being more tired when verbal comes along? Or better not, better verbal being the challenge for this, for example, could be the other way around as well. Verbal being the challenge. Let me start with the challenge, but I'll have my strong point later rather than my weak point. And vice versa if your strong point is verbal. Okay. How do we get that? We need to train, need to practice, need to try. Experience shows that students find, once they're doing tests, they find their way. Usually you have to try one way and another in a couple of mock tests, and then to find, if you're well prepared, you should be able to have your decision made long before the test comes. Any questions? To conclude, some resources, there are plenty of resources on the internet. Sue already said earlier today, we give preference, or should I say priority, to official guide. So important to start official guide. There's a bit of a basic math review there. We also work with basic math in our courses if you need. And the advantage is you practice with real past questions on different levels, going from medium to hard. Okay. And also it has an online feature, allows you to put questions together, a set of questions, and simulate as well. One feature they don't have is that you cannot simulate a proper test over there to get your score. But for that, you have mba.com. Okay, you simulate full tests, you get 2 tests for free. In the beginning, you can buy another 4, and experience shows that the score, if you do proper, if you test proper, you simulate proper, you get a realistic estimate of your score. Not exact thing, but it's a good estimate. And there is extra questions as well. And finally, you might be aware, there is a great platform, a portal, I'll say, which is GMAT Club, full of questions, official questions and not. So it's always a good place to practice, split by level, type, and content. You can simulate full tests, but usually they are a little, the quantitative side tends to go a little bit overboard. That's the only problem. For the verbal is good, but for the quantitative could be a little bit too hard. But if you're up to the challenge, it's a good thing. And finally, it's a very well populated portal. And so it's also interesting to see how different people are approaching questions. Curiosity, most people attending or going into GMAT Club are either from the US or from India itself. Understand? So you see how people are doing, and could be confusing at times. So that's why it's not a place to start off with. The platform also, it's not 100% friendly, but it's a place to recur, to resort to, should you have any questions, or you want to check a point, or you're looking for an extra batch of questions. It's a great resource portal. All right. Okay. With that, we'll conclude. And once again, thank you for all who came. Looking forward to having you, and thank you so much, Anju.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all had a good experience. We will be shortly sending you an email where you can share your CVs for profile evaluation. And in the meantime, if you have any queries, you can drop your messages on premium@iKounselor or WhatsApp us on 750-936-2222. I'm sharing this on the chat box. Thank you once again for your valuable time, and I assure you that Team iKounselor will leave no stone unturned to make your future shine brighter at the top of the universities. Thank you, Sue and Shimon, for your valuable time. Thank you.